Hello and welcome back to the Spotlight Games podcast for episode 106, our first episode of the year 2024. I'm your host, Patrick, and this week we will be unveiling the Spotlight Games' own Game of the Year, along with many very dumb awards presented by the Golden Beefies. Joining me, as always, my sweet dumpster boy, one of the beefiest boys I have the pleasure of knowing, Cayman Darty. Cayman, how are you? Happy New Year.
Patrick, I'm good. Guess what, Patrick?
What?
Woo!
We're back.
Woo!
Can you believe it?
Can you believe it? Can you?
It's the thing. I sit here and I ask myself, can I believe it? And I just don't know that I can.
Sometimes it's tough.
Sometimes it's tough is the thing. I think sometimes people don't really understand how tough it is. But we're here to tell you nothing's too tough when you put your mind to it. You know what I mean? Cayman, it's a new year, new us, same podcast, same bullshit, same Golden Beefies. I'm so excited. As our weekly listeners will know, we took a little 2-week hiatus, half on purpose, half not on purpose. I got so ever-loving sick 2 weeks ago. I got food poisoning. I gave myself food poisoning with some bad salmon. I don't know that I'll have salmon again in the year 2024. We'll see.
Such a shame. Salmon's such a good fish.
Such a good little fruit. And I just don't know that I'll ever eat it again. And then it was, Christmas, New Year's time. So a little 2-week hiatus is over, and we got Daddy in the chat. Swag Daddy 69, Andrew, my big brother. Hey, Andrew. I haven't talked to you in so long either. We're so happy. We're so healthy now. We still have each other, but we haven't talked, and that's a shame. Cayman, are you ready for what we're about to get down? And
Patrick, can I just say this is the Golden Beefies, the game of the presented by the Golden. We used to call it the Golden Beefies. Now it's the Spotlight Games Game Awards presented by Golden Beefies.
Yeah.
This is my favorite episode every year.
It is always so much fun. I go through previous year's winners, and I'm like, what kind of award was that? I will say, I think we have some pretty tame awards this year, but we still have some spice to throw in. A couple new ideas, a couple new things we're bringing to the table. All in all, we're going to have a great time. But before we get into that great time, how about some housekeeping, Cayman? We have a lot of video game stuff to talk about because this is the Spotlight Games podcast, where each week, unless we take a 2-week break, we spotlight the latest and the greatest in the world of video games. You can get it by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Spotlight Games Pod, or by searching for Spotlight Games in your favorite podcast app. And hey, you can be on the show by tuning in as we record live Tuesdays, or sometimes Wednesdays, or sometimes Mondays. Next week, we're recording Monday. When we're live, you can watch us live. 8 p.m. Eastern time on twitch.tv/Spotlight Games Pod. So be sure to follow us there so that you're notified when we go live, so you can be part of the conversation. The Dumpster Boy SCC in the chat says, go home, you're drunk. I haven't taken a sip, but I already kind of feel drunk. Another piece of housekeeping, join our Discord. I need to update the link description. I learned the hard way. Last time I told you guys to join the Discord, I've had the same link in our bios for like over a year now. Apparently those links expire. Someone texted me, was like, hey, the link is busted. I'm like, well, fuck. So I need to make a new link. So by the time you're listening to this, the link will be updated in the description of our episode, YouTube description, our socials, all those things. We're having a lot of fun on the Discord. We're talking about the games we're playing. We're talking about news that's happening. We're just overall being goofs together in the Discord. So come, if you're a Discord person, come and join the Discord, because we're having a good time. Cayman, so much has happened since we last met. Normally, if somehow this is the first episode of the Spotlight Games podcast you're listening to, normally we start with what we've been playing. We'd have a topic of the show, we talk about some news, but we always start with what we're playing, unless it's a special episode like today, the 2023 Spotlight Games of the Year Award, as presented by the Golden Beefies, because we're going to be talking about at some point in this episode the games that we have been playing recently, if they were good enough to crack our top 10. So the way this is going to work, we both have compiled our top 10 favorite games list from the games that we played this year. Our number 1 games received 10 points. Our number 2 received 9, and so on and so forth. If you watched our top 100 episode, very similar scoring system to that. However, I spiced it up a little bit this year, and Cayman doesn't know this yet. This is news to both Cayman and to our audience.
Oh boy.
There were so many ties this year because last year, for reference, we only had 3 games shared across the 20 games that we submitted. This year, there were 6 shared games. So that makes only like 15 games were submitted between the two of us instead of 20 or whatever that math is. And so there were so many ties that I brought in a little new rule. If it was on both of our lists, it got a little extra bonus. 2 points, 1 point for each list that it was on, to help kind of spread the love so that we don't have and for a 4-way tie.
Sure. I love that idea.
So we're going to be presenting our top 10 from 10 down to 1 and in between each of those awards, because this is the 2023 Spotlight Games of the Year award as presented by the Golden Beefies. We're going to be presenting this year's Golden Beefies in between the revealing of each game or games in the top 10. We got all sorts of categories this year. The very first year we did the Golden Beefies, we talked about TV. We talked about film. We talked about books for some reason. We're just sticking to games.
Can we even read anymore, Patrick?
I don't know how to read. But for the second year straight, we're just sticking to games for the most part. But we'll get to that. Cayman, I think there's only one way to start. And that's to just jump right in.
Let's do it.
Before we do that, though, ShragDaddy69 in the chat has a very, very good question. He says, did you share what the fuck a beefy is? We didn't, and we're accepting no further questions at this time. To start out the awards, the first Golden Beefy of the night. The best game from 2023 that we forgot came out in 2023. This is a returning category from last year, a way to say, what's a game that we really liked playing this year that we just forgot was this year? Essentially, what that means is, what's a good game from January? Essentially is what this category is.
1,000%.
It might not be January. Maybe we'll creep into later months of the year for a game that we forgot came out this year. Sydney Farty in the chat. Let's go. What's up, Sid? Welcome to the show. But Cayman, I would love if you would kick us off with your first Golden Beefy, the best game from 2023 that you forgot came out in 2023.
And Cayman's Golden Beefy goes to Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Okay.
I definitely thought that game came out in 2022.
Yeah, so a little behind the scene thing, I texted you about a game that I won't say. Said, hey, I noticed this wasn't on your list, and I was surprised. Did you forget it? That's a game that I noticed wasn't on your list, and I was like, he didn't forget that. But here we are. It's the best game you forgot came out.
Yeah, here's the thing. I had so much fun playing it. I thought it was an absolutely fantastic game. Here's the thing. There's been so many fantastic games that have come out since that game. I completely forgot it was this year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great game. That is a game that I really would love to look 4 years from now, 5 years from now. And are we still talking about Jedi Survivor, or are we kind of moved on from it? Are we talking about the new Star Wars Outlaws? Are we talking about a new Star Wars game? Like, I wonder what the lasting power will be, because in a year as stacked as this year, didn't even have lasting power this year, for the most part. But great choice. Cognitive Clips in the chat says, sorry, I'm late, daddies. I love the amount of daddy talk we're getting today. But welcome to the chat, Jordan. Always glad to have you. We just gave out our first Golden Beefy from Cayman. Best game from 2022 that we forgot came out in 2022, and that was Star Wars Jedi Survivor. My award that I am giving for the best game from 2022. I didn't.
You can't do it, can you?
Best game from 2023 that I forgot came out in 2023. Horizon Forbidden West: Burning Shores. Now, look, it's DLC, sure. Are we going to have a different DLC category? Yes. Is that going to win that for me? No. I'll go ahead and spoil that. But I think this is a game that, as I was looking through all the games I played this year, I remember I had such a good time with Burning Shores. As we talked about on the show, I feel like it gave the conclusion that Horizon Forbidden West deserved, but didn't give us last year. And, a solid, 10 to 15, maybe 20 hours of the game felt big enough as a piece of DLC to kind of count as an entire game, in my judgment.
Sure.
So I'm saying, yeah, best game from this year that I forgot came out this year, Horizon Forbidden West, Burning Shores. And with that, Cayman, it's time to get into the list proper. The number 10 games, because we're starting with a tie, on the Spotlight Games of the Year award list. Actually, let me throw this up. Presented by the Golden Beefies. Numbers 10, 2 games with 2 points each. So this was pretty low on both of our lists.
Okay.
Hogwarts Legacy.
Okay.
And Dave the Diver. 1 from each of us here.
Both I feel like that's fair.
Squeaked into the list. I feel like I'll start with Dave the Diver since that was my submission. That is a game that I feel like when I think back on Dave the Diver, it consumed me for those, like, let's say 15 days. I felt like all I was doing was playing Dave the Diver on the Steam Deck. I brought it to my desk. I brought it into bed. Like, I was like, I just want to make some sushi. I want to scuba dive down with Dave and just find some things to turn into sushi. And I just remember having such a good time with it. Not a whole lot of story. Not that there was no story, but a game that I think in another year probably could have, like, inched up closer to the top 5. Sure. I don't know that there is a year that this is game of the year, but a good game, a great game even, that I think in a year like this, you could argue it deserves a number 10 spot. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on Hogwarts Legacy. So this is a game that I started over the break, but as I started it, I simultaneously picked back up Baldur's Gate 3 and then never stopped playing Baldur's Gate 3.
There's a reason why Hogwarts is where it is and Baldur's Gate is where it is on my list.
Right. So, so tell me about Hogwarts for you.
Hogwarts, look, I mean, if you remove the conflict aside regarding all the context surrounding Hogwarts Legacy, it's a solid game. It's a very fun game. It's the rinse and repeat. The gameplay loop itself is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I think it is the best Hogwarts simulator that you could possibly have.
For sure.
The way that they created Hogwarts and all of the little surrounding areas, I thought were immaculately done. I think the game both received unjustified hate alongside unjustified praise from both sides of the aisle, trying to offset the other. I think this game is a solid 8.
Yeah.
And I think in a year like this, I think this game, you know, if you were to be like last year, I think this game would probably end up higher on my list, but this year was just jam-packed. Could potentially be the greatest year of video games.
Sure.
With the games that we got. That being said, I think the biggest issue I had with Hogwarts Legacy is just by the time you hit around the 40-hour mark, you run into the Ubisoft issue of here's a huge open world with just way too much stuff to do in it that you end up burning yourself out on side content before you can finish the actual meal. And so because of that, I think that there is, like I said, a solid game here, a lot of enjoyment that I had out of it, but I think sitting at a solid 10 is where I would definitely place this.
Yeah, the little bit that I played, I probably played like, I don't know, 5 hours. And yeah, I felt like barely getting past the tutorial phase of the game. I was like, man, this is, like you said, like this is a great Hogwarts simulator. I'm walking around the grounds. I feel like I'm in the world. The combat, not the best, but again, like super, super early impressions for me. But yeah, I feel like that's a game that I do want to revisit next year when I have more time on my hands to see what all the fuss is about. Okay, number 10, both Hogwarts Legacy and Dave the Diver. Congratulations to both games for the coveted 10th place spot on the 2023 Spotlight Games of the Year Awards. Now to bring in another Golden Beefy, the second Golden Beefy of the night goes to the best game we played that didn't come out in 2023. You know, being podcasters, being enthusiasts of video games, or just, you know, being livers of life, Cayman.
Livers of life, you say?
Yeah, I said it. The livers of
life.
Buddy,
I literally put real people clothes on just for recording on Tuesdays because I'd never leave the house. I don't think I'm living any life.
I mean, you're living some life to me, brother. But what I'm saying is, what I'm attempting to say, Cayman, is that we're all busy people.
Sure.
And sometimes you don't get to a game until the next year. And that's why I think it's always good to honor those games from years past that we just finally got around to. Call this the backlog award, whatever you might call it. But this is our chance to give flowers to a game that didn't come out this year, but maybe we played it this year. It was a part of our own 2023. I'm going to start us off. I almost gave this to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for all of the fucking DLC that we got this year because I played so much Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. But I want to give this award to Signalis. Signalis is a game that came out late 2022, maybe August or October or November-ish of 2022. But this is a game that, as I've continued through 2023, such a massive year for games in terms of the quality of output, it has stayed in my top 10 the entire time in terms of games that I played in this year. For those of you that don't know, it's like an isometric, so like a top-down view that feels like an old school Resident Evil game, but without the tank controls of an old school Resident Evil game. I like a pixely art style, but it's just this like really spooky, fascinating story of this like character in this like weird space that you don't have many answers for, and you're very much like trying to figure out like, what is even happening, why am I here, who am I? And it's just like maybe like 10 to 12 hour experience where by the end of it I was like, man, I have not played a game that good in a long time for what it was, right? Like it's so easy to say in this day and age how many good games come out, like, man, that's one of the best games I've ever played. But so for me, a lot of that comes down to like, does it feel like anything I've played recently? And if it doesn't, does it feel like something I used to love that is just hard to do anymore? A la like old school Resident Evil feeling game. And so yeah, Signalis, if you still haven't played Signalis, highly recommend it. Fucking great game. It used to be on Game Pass. I don't know if it is. I haven't taken the time to look up, but it's like 15 or 20 bucks usually in the store. So check it out. So yeah, Signalis is my choice. What about you, Cayman?
I'm gonna go with Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age: Definitive Edition.
Hell yeah.
As you guys probably heard me speak ad nauseum when I did my platinum review, my 150-hour platinum review of Dragon Quest XI Definitive Edition. This is bar none a top 5 JRPG of all time. No question about it. I would.
Those are big. Those are big claims, brother.
I would put this up there in the same realm as something like Chrono Trigger, Secrets of Mana, Persona 5. Yeah. Like this is a be all to end all of what a JRPG is. And I think if you are a fan of JRPGs, this is not a game that you should ever not play. You'd owe it to yourself to sit down and play this game. Now, whether you spend 150 hours like I did to get the platinum trophy just so that I could fulfill the requirement for our audience, probably not. Go back and listen to that episode. You'll hear my complete thoughts on why I don't think it's necessary to get the platinum trophy. But I do think that this game is absolutely stellar. It's a game that I always wanted to like complete the post game of, and I never had the time to. And Portal opened up whole different realms for me, and yeah, I think it's a beautiful game, and I think it's one everyone should be playing.
Hell yeah. No, it's definitely it is a game that I never would have considered playing, to be honest, until you played it recently and hearing you talk about it. Because like I know Nick has told me about it before, but Dragon Quest is just, no disrespect to Nick, Dragon Quest is just a series that like just never interested me. Like whether it's the art style or the idea, maybe it's just the name. I don't know. Like something about Dragon Quest just never grabbed me. But hearing the way that you and Nick have talked about it now together, I'm like, okay, I need to play Dragon Quest 11. So it's certainly on the list. Hell yeah. Number 9. We're up to number 9 now. This is our second, not our last, but our last for a while tie. Both with 3 points, number 9. So again, toward the bottom of both of our lists. A game that we've already talked about and one we haven't. So we can breeze right on by the one we've talked about, which is Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Sharing the title, though, is a game that I don't believe you've had the pleasure of talking about on Spotlight Games, Dead Island 2.
Woo! Woo! Woo!
Tell me about it. Let's talk about Dead
All
Island.
right, so here's the thing. Before we jumped on record, I'm literally on the last quest, side quest necessary to pop the platinum trophy.
Okay.
I am in love with this game. This game, I slept on because the truth is this game had become a running joke. It was supposed to come out in what, like 2013? And I don't even, maybe even sooner than that, 2012 maybe. And it never was going to come out. And we had laughed and made fun of it. And it had become the butt of many games industry jokes.
Man, we expected it to be dog shit.
And that was the thing. We'd also joked about the fact that when the game finally came out, it was going to be so utter dog shit that we would just be like, yeah, it is what it is. And we would laugh our way through it. Boy, oh boy, were we wrong. This game, first I want to say that 2023 was a year for horror video games. It was a renaissance of horror video games. And I think Dead Island 2 strikes a beautiful balance between there's genuine moments that will scare the shit out of you. You will jump out of your skin. And there are moments that are absolutely hysterical. You will be laughing so hard. You chop a zombie's jaw off, chop them in half with a giant sword.
Yeah.
It has that perfect mix of meta. It knows exactly what it is. It doesn't try to be anything other than a game. It's a video game-ass video game.
Yeah.
And it is a B movie. It's schlocky. It's funny with some really heart tugging moments thrown in that feel not out of place, even though the world's very funny. And I think that just goes to show how well the developers have done with this game. And I, going in, was hoping I would enjoy it. And the reviews were shockingly good, I think, from pretty much all of the big outlets.
Mm-hmm.
But I went in with trepidation. I was like, look, it was on sale for the PSN sale. I said, fuck it, let's ball. I'll play it, and just absolutely fell in love. This game, I'm about to roll the platinum, which, go back to Discord, do want to point out that if you want to hear our platinum reviews when they happen, I post all of my platinum reviews live on our Discord. So here in a little bit after we're done with the Golden Beefies, and I've popped this platinum, I'll be dropping my review there. But know that this game is a sleeper hit of 2023. If you like zombies, if you like horror games, honestly, if you just like fun, if you like video games that are fun, play Dead Island 2. It's on sale right now. It's an absolute blast. Co-op is incredible. Just fucking play this game.
Hey, do you like having fun? Play Dead Island 2.
Yes, absolutely. And play co-op with me. I'll go back after platinum. I'll play this after I platinum it. Co-op.
I'm making a pledge to you right now, Cayman, and to our audience. Something I haven't said yet on this podcast today is that over the break, I got a gaming PC. It's something that I've been talking about for so long. I've always been wanting to stream for the podcast, but I've never had the rig to do it. Finally pulled the trigger, did it. And this thing is a little monster. She got a fat little ass.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to stream Dead Island 2, I think.
Hell yeah. You're going to love it, dude.
Because I think with the specs that I ended up going with, I think this is a great game to play on this PC. So I think at some point this year, hopefully soon, I will stream Dead Island 2. Because watching the trailer just now, if you're watching the YouTube video, I was like, this looks really fun. And it looks like it'd be really fun, man. Numbers 9, Jedi Survivor and Dead Island. Congratulations to both for the coveted 9th place in our list. Next up, something that we teased a little earlier on the list, best DLC released in 2023. This was a year that had a lot of it. We had God of War, Horizon Forbidden West, Resident Evil had its expansion. We had Final Fantasy 16 released one of 2 expansions, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Cyberpunk 2077, Dead Cells Return. I mean, there's so many high-profile pieces of DLC released this year. Tales of Arise came in, which I don't believe you've played, but Jordan, friend of the show, has.
I'm not.
But Cayman, I would like to hear what you think was the best piece of DLC released in 2023.
I think it's apropos that with it, Dead Island 2 comes in at number 9 because the best DLC I played this year was Dead Island 2's House, which is one of the most bizarre DLCs ever. It is a story expansion that takes place immediately after the events of Dead Island 2, but you can pick it up and play at any given point during it. They do block you off until you're at a certain point narratively before you can go back to finish. However, I definitely recommend if you are going to play Dead Island, and this DLC is a must play. It follows a Scientologist type cult. It is a creepy, it is straight fucking horror DLC.
Really? Like, is it much more horror than the rest of the game?
I would say this is the most horror of the entire game, which is a really fun change of pace. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of scary moments in Dead Island 2, but the house DLC is a horror expansion. It is terrifying at times.
Hell yeah.
And the way that they do it with the cult and with it being like super futuristic sci-fi and the way that it ties into the story, I think I believe that it builds upon the world of Dead Island 2 in a really, really, really smart way.
Okay.
And I think it elevates the base game up to another level, which I think is what a DLC should do. But at the same time, also, I think it's just so weird and so different that I've never seen a DLC do something like this before.
Cool.
And so because of that, like, that's why I'm thinking of like all these other DLCs that have come out that I'm like, yeah, you're basically just playing the same game. You might do an extension, or it might be a little bit, it might be a rogue elements they've thrown in. Not knocking Valhalla, but I think House is just weird, man. It is just weird. And I think for a game like this, being really weird is exactly what you need.
We love weird.
That's highly, highly, highly recommend
Hell yeah.
That DLC. It's great.
Love it. Yeah, I certainly want to play that game now. For me, so I feel like the next year I'll probably look back from what I've been hearing and say Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, but I haven't played it. But I do plan on playing it soon. I already talked about Burning Shores, which Jordan in the chat says he did play the Tales of Arise DLC. It was fine, but he'd give this one to Burning Shores. And I considered it because, as I said, it's my favorite game that came out this year that I forgot came out this year. But I want to give it to something more recent. And it's something that I've still not finished, but I had such a good time with it, with what I have played of it, so much so that it has inspired me to go back and do a new game plus run of God of War Ragnarok, which is God of War Valhalla, which was just released a few weeks ago, right after the Game Awards. And I was just so impressed with it because at first, when it was announced, we were like, oh, wow, we're getting a new story DLC for God of War Ragnarok, Spotlight Games Game of the Year last year, with the a full 20 points, got both of our #1 spot last year. And then we heard, oh, it's a roguelike version. I was like, oh, that doesn't sound as good. But then I started playing it. I was like, oh no, this is the roguelite of it all is just a means to an end. Like this, it has more story to tell. And I really want to see what this story is that they're saying it's like an epilogue to God of War Ragnarok. And so it felt so good. It took me a minute to get back into like the swing of things, but I was like, man, I've just forgot how good that game feels to be playing as Kratos. And while you're battling, having that little banter with Mimir. So that is a game. While I haven't finished it, or DLC rather, while I haven't finished it, I was so impressed with the little bit that I did play that it got my spot for the best DLC from this year. And I will be reporting back in the coming weeks with my full thoughts on Valhalla when I have the chance to finish it, when I fucking finally finish Baldur's Gate 3, which is going to happen very soon. On to number 8, Cayman.
Yes.
No more ties. I mean, not
no more ties.
There will be ties, but we got a break from the tie. We can just talk about one game at a time now.
Baby.
Number 8 with 4 points. This was on my list and not on your list, Cayman. And that game is, I know. That game is Cocoon.
Cocoon.
This is a game that we talked about relatively recently. So I won't
say it one more time for me.
Cocoon.
Cocoon.
So I won't go too deep on it, or I won't go too far on it. I won't let it go too deep on me, Cayman. But Cocoon is a puzzle game. It's a puzzle game made by a lot of the team that made Inside and Limbo. It's like you play as this little bug and you're in this like desolate world. And within this desolate world are these orbs. And within those orbs are worlds that are also desolate. And there's like this weird Inception situation happening. And like the game mechanics of these orbs serving as both tools and ways to like go into new spaces, and figuring out how to go from one and bringing an orb into the other. Like just like the puzzle of it all was so satisfying. And it was just like a really beautiful thing to look at. The story is certainly like one that you come up with yourself. Like it has a story to tell, but it's very light. It's more like vibes. In terms of like, there's something going on here. They're not really telling me what it is, but it's spooky. And so, yeah, I was just really impressed with this game. It ended up falling at my number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the year. So, I mean, hey, in a game with this many bangers, number 7's pretty good slot. But it gets our number 8 together with 4 points. So congratulations to, one more time, Cocoon.
Cocoon.
And with that, we move to the next Golden Beefy of the night. A Golden Beefy brought to us by Cognitive Clips, the best modernization of 2023. This was a year that had so many remasters, so many remakes, so many re-releases in some capacity that it felt right. It felt like there's enough.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if we did nominations for the Golden Beefies, which we don't do, this would have been a full 5 or 6 games nominated here. Like there were that many of them. So I think I think there is something to be said about this category. And, you know, it might not be here every year. It just really depends on how many come out. But this year,
Lollipop Chainsaw is getting remastered and it comes out next year. So
it's happening. But Cayman, start us off with the best modernization of 2023.
Best modernization for 2023 for me, Golden Beefy is going to go to Resident Evil 4 Remake.
Same.
Man, that game fucks, bro.
It fucks so hard.
Dude, it fucks.
Yeah.
Okay? What is there to say, Patrick? It's
actually nothing. Moving on.
I mean, really, it's okay. Resident Evil 4. It's Resident Evil 4, except somehow even better. And I think that that's the testament of Resident Evil 4 Remaster, is that Resident Evil 4 is considered a masterpiece and considered a genre-defining game, and like move the way that that horror games, like how they played. Resident Evil 4 changed the face of what horror games were. And for them to be able to make a remaster of such a iconic game and then make it even better, I think is just a testament to how good the Resident Evil team is moving on right now at Capcom. Like they are just out of this world good.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think for me, the reason it did it for me was for it being such a celebrated game, so many people's favorite game ever, a 10, even back then, for them to bring something new to it and not fuck it up and in fact improve upon the original formula, I think is such a triumph for when you're like, when you have such a delicate ecosystem in terms of like you're remaking one of the most celebrated things like ever. And for you to hit a home run with it and with all the new content that they brought in and it just feel right. So much so that like, as I'm hitting credits, I'm like, I actually don't really remember the things that are new here. Like it felt so natural to the story that it didn't jump out to me as being changed or new or altered or whatever. So for sure. And then Jordan in the chat says everything you're saying is why I would personally give it to Metroid Prime Remastered, but Remake was incredible. That is certainly on my list of games to revisit next year because I've only played like 15 minutes of it. I need to go back. But yeah, that it seems like everything that we said about RE4 also seems to be true for Metroid Prime Remaster from what I've been told, outside of the new content. Although Jordan, I don't think there's new content in it, but let me know if there is. Okay. On to number 7. This is another Patty special.
Ooh.
A game that you haven't played, but a game that I do think you should play because it might show up in a different award, a different Golden Beefy later that would interest you, which is a little bit of a hint. But at number 7 with 5 points, Venba. This was a game that I played maybe first half of the year. I forget exactly when I played it, but it's a pretty short game, maybe 3 hours tops. But one of those things that I kind of mentioned earlier were like, man, I've never played a game like this before. And in terms of gameplay, the gameplay is you are an immigrant from India and you're trying to like figure out what life is like in this new country of Canada. And there's like language barriers and obviously cultural barriers. And a way of coping and a way of trying to, you know, feel comfortable and like kind of, you know, grow your family is through cooking. And so you have your mother's cookbook, but a lot of it is like, you know, there's like grease stains on it or there's pages ripped. So you have to kind of guess on things to kind of figure out like, is this how you actually make biryani or whatever? And it's just like a really heartwarming game, and a great platinum trophy. And so yeah, Vinba ends up coming in at number 7 with 5 points. I don't think this is a game on one of the streaming services, but it might be. So double check it if you are interested but don't want to throw down like $20, I think is what it was. But yeah, Vinba, a solid fucking game, and one of those indie titles that I think shines through in such a stacked year. So yeah, Vinba, number 7 with 5 points. The next Golden Beefy of the evening, a game, a category that we've brought back, I think, for the 3rd year in a row. This is the best game that Patrick refuses to play. And previous winners, I can only remember last year's winner, although do we have it in no, it doesn't look like it. So this is actually 2 years running now, award. And this is, you know, I know what I want to say, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say, Kate.
So the Golden Beefy for the best game Patrick refuses to play is going to Bulletstorm.
I mean, what else is there to say at this point, Cayman?
I mean, you are an ass.
Yeah, I'm an ass. There's no excuse at this point. There's no excuse.
Exactly.
To keep it for this year, though, Cayman, my choice, and you know, this isn't like because I'm saying this doesn't mean that I will never play this game, but it certainly seems like it. And that's RoboCop Rogue City is what I'm giving. Best game that Patrick refuses to play. I mean, take me out back and spank me right now, Cayman.
I'm going to take you out back and spank you.
You fucking better. Last year, Tiny Tina's Wonderland was the unanimous choice, which it's so funny when I revisited that, because the amount of times this year that A, I forgot that we said that, and B, I've looked at Tiny Tina's Wonderlands on sale for like $10 and been like, do I buy this? And I still haven't.
It's a great game, man.
I really don't know that I'm ever going to play that game.
It's a great game.
And then you know, that's a bit of a disappointing category, Cayman. So to pair that, another Golden Beefy for this quick aside is the biggest disappointment of 2023. You know, this is a game that, whether we had high hopes for it or not, filled us with nothing but disappointment this year. So I have a feeling I know what yours is, Cayman, but I'd like to hear it from you. What is your biggest disappointment of 2023?
Golden Beefy's going to Diablo 4. God damn it. Diablo 4 pulled the heart directly out of my chest and just shit on it.
Yeah.
As someone who is a diehard Diablo guy, Diablo 4 sucked.
Yeah.
It felt like a cash grab in a way that I don't think we've seen. We've seen cash grabs. This was just brutal. The fact that, like, when the game launches, for you to be able to get like just a set of armor, like a cosmetic set of armor, for one character was like $40. Is unheard of. Then throwing in being like, oh yeah, but when we're going to be doing battle pass and there's going to be seasons, and like on the face of it, it's not a terrible thing. But then when you tell me, oh, every season you're going to have to re-roll a character and play a brand new character, the character you played last time is not going to be used anymore. Throw it out the window. Doesn't exist. It ruins the sense of progression that like Diablo's really good at. It's like, yes, I love to play as all these different classes, but when I have my main class, that's the one I'm going to be just constantly playing on. And for that game just to be like, to completely remove what made Diablo so great, just heartbreaking.
Yeah, I was really disappointed in Diablo 4, but I was never a huge Diablo guy. So for me, it was just like I guess I'm just not a Diablo guy. But then to hear you talk about it, it's like, I feel like I could be a Diablo guy. And I feel like if I ever was going to be one, it was going to be 4 if they didn't shit the bed.
Shit, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks,
you
Bobby.
Fucking ass.
Yeah. Don't hurt yourself on the way out, or do. For me, I I actually went Starfield on this one, which is I kind of expected you to go Starfield, but hearing what you said about Diablo makes sense because I also think you always kind of expected Starfield to not deliver.
Yeah.
Whereas I held out hope so much so that, and we'll revisit this in a couple of weeks when we go over our predictions from last year. But so much so, I had a prediction that Starfield wouldn't be getting multiple 10s. Like I was so confident and hopeful that it was going to be the next big thing from Bethesda, and it just wasn't. That doesn't mean I didn't love my time with it. I devoured that game. I had a lot of fun with it, but it had that same kind of ringing feeling that Fallout 4 had of it's just more. And that going into space, there was nothing magical about going into space. In fact, it felt like it took magic out of the classic Bethesda formula of all of the worlds being so separate and alone. Completely took out the fun of exploration and that magic of exploration that you normally have going through a massive map in a Bethesda game. It being an infinite number of procedurally generated maps is like, well, now none of these are special. And that, that was, I think, a lot of people's fear, and it just sucks that it came true. But I still do wonder. I mean, the game sold really well. People are still playing it, but I do wonder if it can, like, quote unquote, be saved. Like whether it's a piece of DLC or whether it's just overhauling systems, like, is that a game where we can look back in a year and have like a Cyberpunk conversation about it? It didn't hit the mark for very different reasons than Cyberpunk, but I wonder if there is a world in which we look back and it's like, man, you remember how Starfield wasn't very good at one point, and now it's like a huge thing. I wonder if we can ever get there. I don't know that we can.
So but. I think that's a good point. I think the thing is where something like Cyberpunk, I think you fix Cyberpunk by fixing a lot of the technical issues.
Right.
And shockingly, I say shockingly, Starfield wasn't full of technical issues. The game crashed on me every hour on the hour.
Yeah.
And so it did have its technical issues, but I think the biggest issue is, you're right, man. It was a disappointment based on the actual game design. And I don't know if that's something you can fix.
Maybe not. I also feel like I was actually thinking about this more recently. I kind of feel like one of the biggest disappointments for me is the companions. Is I don't walk away from that game ever thinking about any of the companions at all. And I think that's something that, like, I still think about some of the companions from previous Fallout games and Elder Scrolls games. And so, and the fact that, like, there isn't really one I can pinpoint from Starfield is like, man, they're the one.
The adoring fan. The adoring fan, just because he annoys the shit out of you.
Yeah. Okay, so that is the winner of both of our biggest disappointments for 2023. On to number 6. This came in not on my list. It was on your list, came in, but it is a game that we both played. Coming in at number 6 with 5 points. Final Fantasy 16 came in. Give me your thoughts on Final Fantasy 16.
Final Fantasy 16 is different. It's very different.
Yeah.
It is one of the most different Final Fantasies I think we've ever seen. For good and bad. I think someone like Mondo is categorically come out of record just being like, this is not a Final Fantasy game tip for him or to him. And I think that's totally fair. But I think this is a very cool evolution of Final Fantasy. I think going into Devil May Final Fantasy is a really interesting choice. The boss battles are something otherworldly.
The spectacle is something to be celebrated.
I think the only other game I can think of that made me feel that level of, like, grandiose scale is God of War 3.
Okay.
Of, like, the size of some of these boss fights can be absolutely astounding. I think the story is really cool. I really love the progression system. I really loved the way that the game scales. It's just a really, really, really cool game.
Yeah.
And it's also a video game. And I am always on record with saying that I will overlook a lot of flaws as long as the game brings a level of fun that keeps me engaged. And that was Final Fantasy.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I talked about that game for so many weeks because I kept waffling on what I thought. Ultimately, I did come out positively. Didn't make my list, but it's in the top like 15 for me because there was just that many good games this year. But it is like I do want to play the DLCs. But I mean, Jordan in the chat has already played. Or no, actually, I don't remember if you had played that part yet, Jordan. Remind me. But from what I've heard, the first half of it is good, and it already has like some really dope boss fights in it. And I will happily pay more money to hear Joshua. So, yeah, that's a game I'm so interested to see. Joshua. I'm so interested to see, do we get Final Fantasy 16 2, or do we because it seems like this was such a hit for Square Enix. I wouldn't be surprised if they stay in 16 for a minute before going on to 17. Maybe not. I don't know. Okay, yeah, Jordan says, I started but haven't gotten too far yet. Not for any bad reason, just got sidetracked. For sure, yeah. No, that always happens to all of us. So I get it. But keep us posted on your thoughts, because I would like to hear more on that. So yeah, number 6, Final Fantasy 16. How about that? The next Golden Beefy, I had to reshuffle because I made a little mistake that you probably noticed. The next Golden Beefy goes to the best game we didn't play. This is a game that, we heard a lot about. Maybe the other person played it, perhaps. But it's a game that I would assume by this time next year, either of us will have played the game that is the best game we haven't played. But because there were so many good games, I think it's, always good to give flowers to the ones that we just haven't had time for, Cayman.
It's true.
For me, I am going Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. The second time I've given DLC an award in the non-DLC category, but it's my podcast. I make the rules.
Okay, I think Phantom Liberty is like a different, because they completely revamped Cyberpunk from the ground up. So
for sure,
I'll give you a pass on that.
Honorable mentions to Metroid Prime Remaster and Pikmin 4, two games that have been very celebrated. Pikmin 4 is one that I actually don't think I'll ever play, but I do think that I'll play Phantom Liberty and Metroid Prime Remaster. But it's funny because I went back and I looked at what our winners were for last year, and I don't believe either of us played what we chose last year, which was Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and Pentiment. I certainly didn't play Pentiment, but I
certainly played Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I do not have 250 hours.
Yeah, no way.
I only have 150 hours for a thing called Dragon Quest XI.
Yeah, Cyberpunk 2077 was a game, though, for me, Phantom Liberty specifically, where I've heard nothing but amazing things about this game. So much so that even though I didn't have a great Cyberpunk experience, I said, fuck it, I'm playing it again, and I'm playing Phantom Liberty because it's getting that much praise. So I'm hoping that I can get through. That is, I think, going to be the first game I play on my PC. I did a tiny bit that first night we built it, and it was so good. But yeah, so Phantom Liberty is my choice. How about you, Cayman?
I'm going to go with Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. Sorry, I went with the pregnant pause to kind of like drum up suspense on what we're going to say. Yeah, here's the thing. I almost got it a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, do I have the patience to get my ass kicked this much? And I just don't think right now my mental health can handle it.
Hey, you platinumed the last FromSoft game.
Yeah, and it ruined my mental health in the process.
True.
I don't know if I can handle that. The honestly though, the reviews have been stellar, and I think a lot of it is a lot of the people who the naysayers are naysayers because they're like, this is not Dark Souls. What the fuck is this game? And it's like, Armor Core is Armor Core. I don't really know of another game like it.
Right.
So like, either you're going to love it or you're going to hate it. It's Armor Core. So for me, I'm like, hey, I enjoyed Armor Core growing up. The games are brutally difficult. I just right now don't have the gumption to be able to continue to do it. So one day I will.
Oh, you will. Get you that gumption, baby.
Yeah, burger.
That I almost gave it to Armored Core as well, but I didn't. So there's that. Number 5, we're entering the top 5, Cayman, of the Spotlight Games of the Year presented by the Golden Beefies. Number 5, this is a game that was on both of our lists. So this got a little bump in the numbers with the new scoring. Originally was a little lower, but I think it deserves the spot that it's at. And that game is Dead Space, the remake of Dead Space. So number 5 with 5 points. Dead Space. And the reason, so you might, if you're attentive listener, the last 3 games have all gotten 5 points. And the way that I chose the order was Dead Space was on both our lists. We both played Final Fantasy 16 and only I played Bimbo. So that was the order in terms of the hierarchy. Because look, if they were all the tie, there actually weren't enough games submitted in our top 10s to make a full top 10 list because there's so many ties. So yeah, Dead Space. This was one that almost also got my best modernization. But I think what ended up not being the case was I do think that there were a couple things that could have used quality of life improvements that didn't get it.
Sure.
I would have loved to see a little bit of a swing in terms of new story details. I would have loved to see, they did so many quality of life improvements with the way the game felt and the way the game played, but I would have loved to see like what does their own spin on it. And so much so that I really hope that we get a Dead Space 2 remake, because the Dead Space 1 remake was so good. And I hope that they zig a little with the Dead Space 2 remake, if that ever happens. Because
I hope they zag a little as well.
Yeah.
I honestly can't disagree with a single thing you said about it. That is exactly the case, right? Dead Space was great, man. That's how we launched the year off.
Yeah,
with
what
Dead
a great
Space.
We should have known we were in for a fucking
and that's, once again, like I said, 2023 has been this might be peak like horror in video games. I think is 2023 right now. There's so many great horror games, and Dead Space, I think, it set the pace for what this looks like. It also just showed like how incredible that Dead Space is. Like, it's fucking terrifying. I think arguably the scariest game to come out this year.
Now, sure.
Don't get me wrong, I didn't play the new Amnesia game. But this game, it shows like how well like it holds up as a story. I think you're right though. I think if throwing in, because a lot of what I think Dead Space thrived on was the fact that it had such a crazy twist ending.
Yeah.
And not that you can change that ending, but I think there's other ways that you can try to bring that magic back a little bit. And I think that's the only downside. Other than that though, great game.
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy that in such a stacked year, obviously we haven't revealed the top 4 yet, but there's a lot of horror on this list. And that's awesome that we had such a good year for horror that in this stacked of a year, nearly half the list is horror games, which is awesome. Back to the Golden Beefies. Before we get to number 4, the next Golden Beefy goes to the best game that kind of sucks, but we still loved it. This is, especially in a year like this, sometimes a game deserves a little love, even if it wasn't like the most polished or like the best thing we've ever played, but it was still fucking great for what it tried to do. So Cayman, what are you giving the Golden Beefy to for the best game that kind of sucks, but you still love it?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Hogwarts Legacy on this one. Yeah, it like showed up on my number 10. Here's the thing. Like I said, it kind of sucks because you burn yourself out with all of this useless side content that just has that Ubisoft formula.
Sure.
And I think we've got a lot of open world games this year that show you the right way to do optional content.
Right.
And I feel like it's a bit ho-hum for a game like Hogwarts to really pad out the time of the game by all of this useless shit that you can do, that it wants you to do, that it makes you do.
Yeah.
That really sours the experience. Came in at number 10 for me at the end of the year. But I mean, look, they're still fun. I still really had a good time. It just kind of sucks.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That tracks for sure. And you know who else sucks? J.K. Rowling, but we've talked about it.
True.
For me, I almost went Starfield, but I've already talked about Starfield as my biggest disappointment. And while I did like it a lot, I am giving this to Stray Gods, the role-playing musical. That is a game I said it before and I'll say it again. Please give us a sequel, or please give us a second crack at Stray Gods, the role-playing musical, because in a lot of ways, respectfully, the game sucks. Like, story ultimately doesn't have like the best conclusion. Sometimes the songs aren't very catchy. Sometimes the performances aren't the best, but it was I think it's a really like brave game, which might sound stupid, but like The fact that they made a role-playing musical where you get to choose lines of a song as you go through, as if you're in Mass Effect choosing dialogue, and it didn't like actually suck, I think is worth celebrating. And I think with another chance to tighten things up and figure out like, okay, what are some ways that we can make the music feel a little more what's the word I'm looking for? A little more like, I can't find the word, but like worth listening to. Like sometimes by the end of the song, I'm like, did that need to be a song? Maybe not. So like if they can kind of figure out that.
You mean the entire back half of Into the Woods?
Oh man. There goes at least 2 of our listeners for life.
Oh, come on. If you're out there in the audience right now and you're trying to tell me the second half of Into the Woods is good, you're lying to yourself.
I actually think the second half is better than the first half, personally, but I just like when people die. Okay, man.
Yeah, it's just okay. That's fair. Sure.
But yeah, so Stray Gods, the role-playing musical. Give us another shake. And you know, if you want to cast me in it, I'd love to sing for you.
You know, Patrick, it's funny when I was coming up with what I was going to put down, I went with Hogwarts. I almost went Redfall, but that would require me to admit that I liked any of Redfall, which I didn't.
Yep, I almost.
Here's the thing, though. That game, you can look at it and be like, this game, there's something brilliant.
Yeah, that was almost my biggest disappointment.
Yeah, nowhere near it, but there's something brilliant
for sure
orbiting.
That was runner-up for me for biggest disappointment, because it being Arcane, I just expected such greatness, but game fucking sucks.
That game was so bad.
Yeah. Back to the top 10. Number 4, we are now within the top 5. Number 4 with 6 points. Not on my list. And some say this is a game that I'll never play.
No way.
Number 4, RoboCop Rogue City.
Let's fucking go. Okay, time to shine. Time to shine.
Time to shine, baby.
I'm going to make this quick.
Leave it all on the court.
All right, here we go. This is one of the most important games to come out in the last 10 years. Let me tell you why. This is a AA game that feels like a AAA game, that feels like nothing you've ever played, but it's also motherfucking RoboCop, and it proves that licensed games can be absolutely incredible. It proves that you don't have to put some crazy budget to make a really good video game. It runs on the Unreal Engine 5. It looks stunning. They've got fucking the Peter Weller's voice. He's in it. The way that they have put everyone's faces in, all of the characters like pinpoint accurate to what they looked like in the movies. It is 80s embodied. It is a B movie, is a video game. It feels incredible. It's the best FPS game, like true first-person shooter this year, hands down.
Okay.
And I will talk about this game here in a little bit again, but I just want to say, without talking about the other portion, but I want to say that, like, as a budget title, and as a budget title, like a true budget title.
Yeah, say it again.
This game shows that you don't have to do absolutely crazy shit to make something brilliant.
Sure.
And I think why this is really important is because the game industry right now is going through massive layoffs because they're overspending and they're doing all this crazy bullshit to try to make everything so much bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You don't have to. You can make RoboCops. There's audiences for this. It'll eat this shit up.
For sure.
And I think right now in video games, a game like this, it should be the wake-up call to the industry for people to start making more games like this.
I agree, because something that we haven't talked about on the show because of our break, and we probably won't because the news will have moved on, but there was a story that came out, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, that was basically, it was like an insider report that there's looking like there's going to be some pretty huge layoffs at Insomniac, which is a studio that we've always felt is like, has been so well guided and so well managed that like they've always kind of avoided this, and they just keep releasing such top tier titles. But it's an example of how unsustainable AAA development is. That's they went $30 million, I think, over budget, and they're like, well, they have to find ways to make up for that, essentially. And so I might be misparaphrasing, but ultimately it seems like there's layoffs coming, and that was kind of the root of what it was. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that we get more games like Rogue City, even though I've not played it, but yeah.
You'll love it, dude. I promise you.
Yeah, hell yeah. The next Golden Beefy came in is the best game we didn't get to finish, but we plan to finish. That doesn't mean that it's not going to be on this list. In fact, it might be on this list in terms of the top 3 as we get to it. But yeah, this award goes to something that we've played a fair amount of, or maybe barely any of, but we're itching to get back to it. What's that for you, Cayman?
It's Baldur's Gate 3.
It's me too.
I've put almost 80 hours into Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
Patrick, I've put almost 80 hours into Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
This game, this is a masterpiece.
Yeah. We're going to talk more about Baldur's Gate. So let's not.
I'm going to shut the fuck up.
But no, it is for me too. And part of the reason for that is, so I started the Point of No Return earlier today. Yeah. So I'm in the final stretch, but I'm already thinking like, what's another character I want to roll in Baldur's Gate 3? Like
Dark Urge run, baby. We're gonna co-op a Dark Urge run together. It's gonna be nuts.
When can we co-op a run on twitch.tv/SpotlightGameSpot with me and the Dumpster Boy?
We're gonna have to turn off the nude. We're gonna have to turn off our nude filters.
Or
can't be seeing the Dumpster Boy's ding dong thick dongus slonging around. Let me see that thick dongus.
Thick dongus slonging around. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, brother.
Good. Say it again. So Baldur's Gate 3 for both of us is the game that we absolutely plan to finish and we haven't finished yet. And then a special little shout out to Valhalla, which I already kind of said that. Number 3, we are now in the top 3, Cayman. The rest of the list, they're in the top 3 because they were on both of our lists. And this is when things start to get a little spicy, Cayman. I hope you're at the stovetop next to your spice cabinet because things are about to get spicy. Coming in at number 3 with 12 points, a game that we have talked about. So if you want to, we can kind of skate by this one. Resident Evil 4 at number 3, Cayman, with 12 points. So this was, let's see, it was my. It was my number 5, and it was your
7.
Number 7. And you're sitting there thinking like, wait, how is this number 3? Partly the bonus, and it'll all be clearer as we finish the list why it's number 3. But yeah, the game fucking rips like that. Yeah. We've said it before. So if you have more questions on why this game is good, email us. But for now, let's move on to the next best Golden Beefy for the best platinum trophy we earned in 2023. Cayman, this is one that I blatantly stole from PS I Love You XOXO. I was listening to their PlayStation Awards and they gave and I was like, oh wow, great award. How did we not think of this? We talk about platinum trophies literally every week on this show. So it felt like a slam dunk.
It's apropos, yeah.
So for me, I'll start this one off. I think the easy answer is Spider-Man 2. Top to bottom, clean platinum, very little fat on it. Has you try new things, has you experience, certain aspects of the game. But in classic Patrick fashion, Cayman, I'm going to give this award to a platinum I did earn in the year 2023, so I'm not cheating. That is The Last of Us Part 1.
Motherfucker. God, well, it's on brand. If you give me an
opportunity to talk about The Last of Us. But here's the thing. I had always wanted to get The Last of Us Part 1's platinum. It's my favorite game of all time. But the first platinum on the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4 versions required multiplayer. It's fucking impossible. Yeah. There will come a day where you can't get that platinum anymore when they
start. No, it's already you cannot get that platinum.
Are the servers
done? Yeah, they are done. It's been years. It's like 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
So I could finally get a platinum trophy for my favorite game of all time. So that's why it's getting my Golden Beefy for best platinum trophy. Cayman, awesome. What about you?
I'm going with RoboCop. I think RoboCop is a 5 out of 5 platinum for me. As I like to call them, platinum shovels. So I think the thing is why it's a perfect platinum is because there's really no fat to it. Like you said, it's lean, mean, green. There's only really one trophy that you actually have to work towards. And even that trophy's pretty, I mean, if you just give it a couple tries, you'll be able to knock it out. It's not too difficult. But what I love, and this is what I love about platinum games, like a good platinum run, is when you make me do funny shit that is very specific to the world, like shoot off people's penises. If you watched RoboCop 1, there's an attempted sexual assault where RoboCop shoots a dude's dick off.
Hell yeah.
And and there is a trophy for shooting like 10 dudes in the dick. Amazing. And little trophies like that you just get naturally, and then you look and then you laugh your ass off because it's like perfect for the world, right? That is a perfect platinum trophy, and RoboCop delivers it in spades. All of the trophies in that game make you experience all of the great game, everything that it's there. And because if you're a trophy person and you're trying to, I think it helps the experience of the actual game because you're not going to miss some of the greatest moments in the game. Some of the best side quests in the game you're not going to miss because you're going to go through and do these little things, and it's just really cool. I love it. I had so much fun getting it, and I want to say it was the second platinum I got of all of the year.
Hell yeah.
Which is crazy considering the game came out in November, and
you got like 15 platinums this year.
Dude, I just went once I got the portal, it was just like one after another. It was just knocking them out. Like gung ho is crazy.
Fucking Kobe at the 3 line. Okay, I respect it. And look, I put it as the game I probably won't play. I probably will play this game. It just you might need to come over and spank me to get.
You'll love. I mean, I'll do it, bro.
I'll do it, brother. Number 2, we are now in the top 2 for the coveted. I mean, here's the thing, Cayman. I got so many emails this week from developers. Sam Lake in my fucking DMs. Brian Intihar from Insomniac came to my house, knocked on my door, said, "Where are we falling on Spotlight Games of the Year?" I was like, "Dog, it's Christmas morning. Why are you here?" Number 2 came in with 18 points. I'm so fascinated with how numbers 1 and 2 ended up shaking out. Number 2 is a tie.
Okay.
With Marvel Spider-Man 2 and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Interesting.
So the way that this shook out, I'll go ahead and say numbers 1, or because I think it's our listeners can deduce. And number 1 is a tie as well between Baldur's Gate 3 and Alan Wake 2. And the way that this happened, Cayman, is your number 1 was Baldur's Gate 3. My number 1 was Alan Wake 2. Your number 3 was Alan Wake 2. My number 3 was Baldur's Gate 3. Wow. Your number 2 was Spider-Man 2. My number 2 was Tears of the Kingdom. Your number 4 was Tears of the Kingdom. My number 4 was Spider-Man 2. So they were the exact same, just flip-flopped on both.
Wow.
And when you sent it over, I saw what this was doing. I was like, I'm not going to change any of it. I'm going to let it happen. Because I think this right here is like the perfect metaphor for this year of video games. Where like there's so many 10s this year that like I think you've said it, and I think as we 10 years from now, we probably look back and say Baldur's Gate 3 is the clear game of the year for 2023. Sure. But I think in the moment, as we just played all of these games, each of them have something so special about them that I think it's fair, and I think it makes sense that they're all kind of sharing the titles together. So I almost just choked on literally nothing. I want to start by talking about The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, a game that we have not even mentioned once this episode, which I think is so fascinating too, that it lands at number 10, but there was no golden beefy for it. But that's the thing about this game is I think as I was thinking through my own list, I really went back and forth on numbers 2 and 3 being either Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate 3, because I feel like I'm far enough in Baldur's Gate 3 where I could choose between whether it was 2 or 3. And I loved Alan Wake 2 so much that I didn't see it being knocked off as my number 1. But Tears of the Kingdom, I think, is just such a special game for the break the video game. Like, I think that is something, that's the thing I think we're going to look back on with Tears of the Kingdom, for it being such almost like a love letter to game development in a way of, if you can think to do it, it'll work. Like, there's going to be tools for you to be able to do it. And I think that that's just such an interesting, cool thing about a game franchise that has been around for so long and somehow still after 12, 13 entries can figure out a way to reinvent itself. And even though so much of it feels like Breath of the Wild 1.5, there's still so much new in Tears of the Kingdom, whether it's the skies or the Underdark. I don't remember what they call it in Tears of the Kingdom, but that's what they call it in Baldur's Gate. I think it's a triumph of a video game, and it's in my top 5 all time at the moment. And the crazy thing about this year is I genuinely think there are 3 games from 2023 in my top 10 of all time like that. And I don't think it's recency bias. I think that's how fucking good this year was for video games.
I agree. Tears of the Kingdom, and I think it's a testament on how good it is, because I wasn't a Breath of the Wild fan.
Yeah.
But Tears of the Kingdom, the way that the super hand worked, that gameplay mechanic, I felt like turned Breath of the Wild on its head.
Yeah.
To make it a game for me. The way that I could solve puzzles however the hell I wanted to. And that was, I think, the coolest thing about it is that it's a game for people who are both incredibly smart and incredibly stupid.
Sure. Yes.
Because there are legitimate ways to solve puzzles. The game wants you to do it. And then you can just be really fucking dumb like me. Solve games with a lot of big, long bridges.
Yeah.
And the game is totally okay with it. And that's amazing, right? So many times games will block you off if it doesn't do exactly what you need to do. So to have that level of freedom on something like the Switch, which is technically so much weaker than the current gen consoles, for it to run that is wild to me. But to the point, like you said, it is really Breath of the Wild 1.5.
Sure.
Even though that 0.5 is so much.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it wasn't as high on my list as some of the other games, because while I really enjoyed how it did everything, it still felt like the world still felt the same to a large degree.
Sure.
But I still think it is a testament to like how incredible Nintendo is when it comes to putting out like first party titles. And I think we will look back on this game, especially the super hand.
Yeah.
Like mechanic is, I think we're gonna like that is something that could change the way video games are made.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I don't disagree. And then so sharing number 2 is Spider-Man 2, which is a game that we've talked about several times in this episode, but I feel like we haven't really talked about like why it's as good as it is. And to keep it brief, I feel like it really perfected the Spider-Man formula. Like Spider-Man 1 previously like was in my top like 15 or 16, and I haven't decided yet if I think Spider-Man 2 as a full package is better, because I think there's like story things from 1 I like more than 2, but then I just think that like they got rid of so much excess while still bringing in a lot of new stuff. Like it feels like there is the same amount of content from one game to the next, but there's just the content of 2 is just so much more impactful and so much more, I think, curated. And I think that's why it kind of, in my mind, was such a step up from 1.
Yeah.
And the shared Spider-Man, like playing as both Miles and Peter, I think was so cool, even though like it created some unintentional like dissonance at parts of the story. Maybe experiencing something as Miles when it maybe should have been Peter, or vice versa. I think sometimes would not feel as good. But ultimately, like that was one of those games where by the time I finished it and got the platinum, I was like, man, what a great game. I don't know that it's a game I'll play again for a while, but it for what it was trying to do, it completely hit the nail on the head. And that Insomniac, I feel like they're going to have to do so much to win Game of the Year, because they just keep making fucking great games, but nothing ever like quite hits that next level of that like masterpiece territory.
Yeah, I think you're not wrong there. I think Spider-Man 2, I think the first Spider-Man was the best superhero game of all time. And then Miles Morales was like, this I think might be the best superhero game of all time.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 2 is just like, this is definitely the best superhero game of all time. And I think in a realm in which Insomniac continues to outdo themselves year over year over year over year, and they're able to make games that feel so good, but at the same time too, like the story works, you're invested, and I think they showed that you can make an open world that feels so good to play in without having to try to put so much filler.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the best part of Spider-Man 2 is that the game never feels like it ever overstays its welcome. Like when I rolled credits and I hit the platinum, I immediately turned around and was like, yeah, this was exactly how long I needed this game to be.
I agree.
And it was perfect.
And then so going into number 1, a tie between Baldur's Gate 3 and Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2, a game that you have not had a chance to talk about on
Oh boy, you are right.
Break.
Yeah, we'll swap on this one. I've talked a lot about Baldur's Gate, and we will again. But yes, I have platinumed Alan Wake 2.
Hell yeah.
You guys just haven't heard about it because either you're not on Discord, which you should be, another plug for it, or because we took a little bit of a break over Christmas. So I platinumed Alan Wake 2. I think Alan Wake 2 is such an interesting video game because it always keeps you on your toes. It always keeps you guessing. Being able to switch back and forth at will or just letting the game play out, I think is such an interesting concept. I did like you did, where I only moved when it felt like it was the right time to do it.
Yeah.
So when I was
getting big, Alan and Saga.
When I would get big story reveals, it was like so cool to be like, oh my God, that's what that, oh my, and like connecting dots.
Yeah.
And I think playing the game feels great. I never felt like at any given point, like I was really lost. I always felt like I kind of knew where I was supposed to be going and knew what I was supposed to be doing while the story itself was a big mystery.
Yeah.
And it was very weird. I think unlike you though, which just a brief reminder, you were bigger on Alan's story than Saga's story while playing through. I actually had the reverse. I enjoyed Saga's story more. And I think the reason why is because Saga's story is much more grounded in reality.
Yeah.
And I really loved the Twin Peaksy cult shit.
Yeah.
So I think not that I didn't like Alan's story. I think Alan's story being in the dark place was like some of the coolest like set piece stuff. There's just some like really cool stuff there. Yeah. But it did all kind of feel a little bit kind of pulled together where I feel like Saga had like more diverse areas. So like, for instance, it wasn't like subway. Okay, that's the subway. Oh, city streets. That's city streets.
Yeah.
And then like, I think the one big one was like, oh, the first time I get to go to the theater was like the only real big, like this is different. But like being lost in the woods as Saga is
spooky,
terrifying.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrifying.
And then the little circus section.
The amusement park, terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. That it's just so cool. I will say there's one thing, and this is not a knock at all. This is not a criticism, but I think is really funny to me, is that Sam Lake is either an absolute madman and just a genius, a creative genius, or he's the most self-centered man in the universe.
It's one of the two.
It's one of the two. Because like him being like, did you sit and watch the entirety of
I sure did.
Yeah, I did too. And I was just like, Sam Lake is just jerking himself off.
There I mean, this is like really light spoilers, but it's not like story spoilers. It's just like experience spoilers. There's like a point in the game where you can like watch a movie, and Sam Lake is just all over the movie.
So fucking funny.
Yeah,
so funny. But he's great. I know. I love him. Like, it's great.
I was listening to him talk with Ilkavili, who is the physical performance of Alan Wake, not the voice of Alan Wake. He's a Finnish actor. And I was listening to them in an interview, and he was talking about how he like needed to like lean on Ilka a lot for like the acting of it all, because he's like just not acted a lot in his career. And I'm like, dude, if you've barely acted in your career, why do you put yourself in so many of your own games? Like, no disrespect. It just like seems so like maybe you should like maybe do some more acting if you're that worried about it. But I mean, I thought he did great.
It's interesting too. One thing that we talked about was that I asked you when we did the spoiler or like the spoiler free review. I said, do you want Max Payne to be connected to the Remedy universe? You said no. I disagree.
Yeah.
I would love for Max Payne to somehow be looped into, because there's so many connections between Alan Wake's written character of Alex Casey and Max Payne.
For sure.
Like,
I'd be into it for sure.
I would
just
love
don't
to
think
see.
It's gonna happen.
I don't either, but at the same time too, like I could see them, like I would love to see him write him in, you know?
Sure. Oh, for
like
sure.
I think would be so fucking cool. And it's just, yeah, it's like Alan Wake, it's an experience, I think, more than anything. And it's a great game too. It was one of those games that while I was playing through it, like Sydney was sitting next to me and she was like cross-stitching and doing her stuff. But like she was invested in what was going on. Like she would ask me, she'd walk away and come back and be like, what happened in the story? And I would tell her like, this is what's going on. It's like, it's one of those incredibly interesting experiences that I really don't think we've ever had a game like this before.
Yeah. And I think that's what it is for me. Like listeners of the show know that like the reason I love this medium so much is the storytelling aspect of it. And I feel like Alan Wake 2 is like the perfect example. Like I don't think Alan Wake 2 works as a movie or a show or a book. I think if anything, it could work as a book of all of those things the most. But there's something about the agency and how different each world feels, like the Dark Place and the regular world. And that crossover and the ability to experience the story in a completely different way. Like there is a way where you can play all of one character's story, and then you'll get to a point where it's like, you can't go any further. Now you got to catch up with the other player's story. And like, that's just not something that you can really do in other mediums. And I just think the way that it works for the story is something that only a video game can do. And I think it serves it for that purpose. And that's fucking great. So Tying number 1 is a game that I've talked some about, but I've certainly put the most time into the game since we last recorded, and that is Baldur's Gate 3, which, to bring in the Golden Beefy category, one of the last Golden Beefy categories, best game of the year, I am giving that to Baldur's Gate 3 as well.
I am as well.
I had been on record saying like, I see why this game is good, but like I just don't quite get it. Boy, do I fucking get it now. And like, I really don't like when you have to say 20-25 hours in, this game will start to sing, but that's just the truth. Like that, it's an unavoidable truth of this game, and it might even take more than that. It might take closer to 40 hours to really start to click, but it's because it is a system fucking heavy game. And there's so many different characters and play styles and storylines and paths and maps, and like there are these forks throughout the game, like one each act essentially, where you kind of have to like pick, are you gonna go this way or that way, this way or that way? So much so that like that is one of the main reasons I want to go back and replay it, is because I want to go that other pathway and see, because it's like the entire act to a certain degree. And like, this game is doing something that, you know, I'm not breaking ground by saying this, but it is just so impressive that it is doing this on such a high scale and such a big scale, as well as it's doing it. Like, I'm in Act 3 now. As I said, I'm in that point of no return. I'm about to finish the game. Once I finish this, like last, who knows how, I mean, it could be 10 hours, but it's like, you can't go back anymore. And there are like still things coming back from Act 1. It's like, sure, it's not like we've never seen a story like call back to something 70 hours ago in video games, but like, it just, everything feels like it has such more weight in this game, and such like the gravity is just so much bigger. The stakes are so much bigger, and the way it all weaves together is just so impressive. It's just, at this point, I'm just like impressed by the game above all else. That, you know, I'm having some technical issues. Like, at this point, I'm starting to, there was a quest, I won't necessarily spoil it, but a character was like trapped, and I had to go get the character, and I got the character, and then the character joined my party as like, not a companion, but as like a sidekick, which like sounds like the same thing, but there's certain characters where like you can, you with a spell, you bring like an elemental. And so like that character was like locked off to me. I couldn't talk to them. I couldn't adjust their thing anymore. And it was a bug. And so I had to go back like an hour and a half and redo like this entire mission essentially, because that was the last time I saved. So that sucked, but I fixed it. I'm fine. And so, but yeah, man, the game is just so impressive. And I think that I said this to Cayman, it's giving me huge Dragon Age Inquisition vibes by the end of it, where like I am just so sucked in to the world, to the stories, that like I'm about to finish it and I'm like, but there's got to be more, right? Like there's got to be more quests. There's got to be more things. And then I Google it and I'm like, dog, there are like at least 20 side quests that I missed in this game. And I'm at nearly hour 90.
I think oh god, so I have missed so many side characters that I was supposed to get on my party that I just completely fucked up and did not get. I didn't even get the druid. I couldn't even fuck a bear in this playthrough.
Oh no,
I know, I couldn't even fuck a bear.
He's like locked into my party. He's fucking great. I can't wait for you to play it again and get him.
So my favorite is I did get into an encounter one time where I was able to convince this boss during this encounter to just kill himself. So he did. He straight up just killed himself for me. And that was like the funniest thing in the world to me, where I was like, because I basically was like, look, man, either I can kill you or you can kill yourself. You killing yourself is a lot, like it's not going to be as bad. You can do it. It's not going to be painful if you just kill yourself. And the guy was like, that's a really good point.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Yeah, it's like, what the absolute flying fuck is this? I can do this in a video game? Is it crazy to me?
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that's the big thing. Like, Baldur's Gate, and this is something we talked about, I think, several episodes ago when we were talking about, like, who's going to be the Game of the Year winner. And why, at the Game Awards, why Baldur's Gate won and why I wasn't shocked by that was because I think at the end of the day, when we're giving out the number one, it's what changes the face of the industry. And when you started to have developers be very vocal about the fact that like Baldur's Gate is going to make their lives harder because people are going to expect games like this in RPGs and they're like just not competent enough to do it. Like that should have been the big light bulb moment for everyone to be like, this game is something special.
I tell you who's shaking in their boots right now is EA with the next Dragon Age, with the Dragon Age Inquisition sequel, Dreadwolf or whatever it's called, because there's a lot of overlap with Baldur's Gate and Dragon Quest. And obviously the setting, they're both fantasy, but like the combat, it's like virtually identical, except instead of it feeling, I feel like Dragon Age Inquisition almost feels more like World of Warcrafty in the way it like presents itself, with this feeling more like, Dungeons and Dragons. But it's like turn-based strategy, fucking fantasy spells, all that shit. And it's very like story forward and like all sorts of paths that change and like drastically different outcomes. But man, for a game that they've been working on for so long and have kind of been on record in like various states of development hell, going through like creative directors and things like that, that is a game where I am sure Baldur's Gate 3 has made them question a lot of what they're doing, for sure.
Well, I think too that this was this, I think it's terrible to say, but this I think is that it was great that this came out, that Baldur's Gate came out at the same time Starfield did.
Sure.
Because I think it opened up the eyes for people to be like, oh, maybe the Bethesda formula, though we love it, is dated. And I hope whatever they come up with next, and the game most likely next is probably going to be the Elder Scrolls 6, that maybe they take away some of this from Baldur's Gate and implement better like setups. Hopefully. Because it never felt like playing Starfield that like any of my choices really made that big of a difference, where literally every choice I make in Baldur's Gate could change the complete outcome of like 8 things down the line. Like it's crazy, the ripple effects from one decision. So I think this game will change the way that the industry plays out, especially with RPGs, which are my favorite genre of games.
Yeah, no, for sure. Me too. But yeah, so Baldur's Gate 3 and Alan Wake 2. It's probably game of the year for this.
I absolutely love that this
and
is
it's
how
like,
it shook out.
When we're about to bring in one more category that we didn't do last year, but I guarantee you if we did it last year, neither Baldur's Gate 3 or Alan Wake 2 would have won, which is predicting game of the year for next year. What do we think is going to win? Whether it's our game of the year or just like game of the year in general. We're gonna swing. We're gonna take a swing here and see if we can get it right. Because at this time last year, we knew about Baldur's Gate 3 and we knew about Alan Wake 2, but I think neither of them had that like 10 power behind them. Certainly Baldur's Gate 3 did not. No one took Baldur's Gate seriously until like right before it launched.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to hear, Cameron, like what you think has the stuff for a potential game of the year next year.
So I have a feeling my game of the year next year is going to be Yakuza Infinite Wealth.
Yeah, which comes out in only a couple
comes out in a couple weeks. Oh my god, Patrick, I'm so excited. Look, the first Spotlight Games of the Year awards / Golden Beefies. It wasn't. We've talked about this. It was just the Golden Beefies.
Yeah.
The Golden Beefies. My game of the year was Yakuza Like a Dragon. This is the sequel. I get to go back into the shoes, Patrick, of Ichi. I'm gonna have Kiryu in my party.
Yeah.
And, oh my god, like it's like a wet dream, dog. I don't know any other way to say it. Like,
yeah,
my game of the year is potentially coming out in like 2 weeks,
and that's very exciting.
This is what I love about video games. And Sid and I were talking about this yesterday, where we were having a conversation about the fact that it's like 2023 did end on a hot note for us. Obviously, my health has been shit.
Yeah.
2024 hasn't got really any better.
Yeah.
In terms of health stuff. And it's been tough when you're in a situation like this to latch on to something that brings excitement to you. Knowing that I get potentially my game of the year in a few weeks is like what I'm holding on to right now. Like
Good.
this is my buoy.
Hell yeah.
And if this game if this game sucks, I might
need a new co-host.
We're gonna be auditioning for new co-hosts.
Yeah.
Patrick, what about you? What do you think is gonna be game of the year?
I thought about this way longer than I should have.
Yeah.
But that's why we have a podcast.
Sure.
You know, as I kept thinking, I couldn't get a game out of my head, and that's Skull and Bones.
No fucking
I'm just kidding. I thought about, could Star Wars Outlaws from Ubisoft surprise us? I feel like a safe guess is Hades 2. There's also, I think when I look at games next year, I also think it's pretty safe to say it's a game we don't know about yet.
Yeah.
But that's not interesting to say on a podcast. So I'm going to swing and say, we've talked so much about this publisher on this show, and we keep wondering, when's it going to be their year? They're spending fucking tons of money to try to make their stable better. And I feel like for the first time, they have a game that could blow our faces off. I don't know that it's coming out next year because they've still not given us a date, but I am putting my guess behind Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 for Xbox as the game of the year for 2024. That's my guess.
It's a bold guess.
It's a bold guess. I'm a bold little boy. I'm a bold little beefy boy.
You're a bold little beefy boy.
The amount of time they're spending on this game and the amount of money that they're putting into this game, and how the first game was such a little like critical darling and a little like not necessarily a cult classic, but like it got a lot of that like indie love behind it. I could see this game surprising people as like oh wow, I didn't know that they had this in them, or like wow, this is so much bigger than its prequel. And it, you know, in terms of its fidelity is incredible. The performances, like I could see it just like checking those boxes in a year where this time last year, we knew next year was going to, or we knew this time last year, we knew this year was going to be a juggernaut. We knew most of the titles that had been announced that ended up being in this episode today for the most part. And I just don't know, when I look at the stable for next year, that there are any games even close to Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man 2, Baldur's Gate, and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, maybe, but I just don't know that that's going to have the stuff. So yeah, I'm taking a swing on Senua's Saga.
It's a bold look. What I'm worried about is that it's going to be style over substance, and we're going to run into Order 1886.
Could be. Absolutely could be the case.
I think it's going to be one or two.
Yeah.
Right. I love it though. I love that pick, and I really do. Xbox desperately needs a win in 2024.
It desperately needs a win, and it would be quite the win for them to have, like, to get a game of the year type situation. But even though I said it wouldn't be interesting to say a game that hasn't come out yet, I do actually think a really good choice for next year, because we think the Switch 2 is going to win, is the next 3D Mario, because I expect that to launch on the Switch 2.
I agree.
I think if that does happen and it's as good as we would expect it to be, I think it would be hard pressed to find a game that beats that for Game of the Year next year. But
I agree. The only other thing I would say is Ghost of Tsushima 2.
Sure. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that could be good, because we don't really know a lot about PlayStation first party next year. We really only know about Helldivers 2.
Very hush hush.
Very hush hush.
Because and part of me wonders if they even have a single game outside of Helldivers 2.
It's supposed to be the beginning of their games as a service push, so we'll fucking see. Yeah. Cayman, why don't we close out the show by first saying, Jordan, you disappoint me. He says Ghost of Tsushima, speaking of Ubisoft syndrome. How dare you?
Oh, that's so different.
But it's okay. Well, we still love you. We've talked so much about games from this year, Cayman.
Yeah.
Why don't we bring back a long spoken about a legendary final award for the Golden Beefies, for the 2023 Spotlight Games of the Year Awards, as presented by the Golden Beefies. And that is the best movie from 1997. If you've listened to our shows in the past, you know that this is an award that we've given out 2 years in a row. This makes 3 years. Previous winners for the 2 years that we've given this award have been Good Burger twice, Con Air, and Dante Speak. How did 4 movies win 2 awards? Your guess is as good as mine, brother. But we're back for the 3rd straight year with the best movie from 1997. Could Good Burger get a 3rd year in a row? I don't know. Cayman, what's your choice for best movie from 1997?
I think there's an upset on the horizon.
Oh,
I'm going with Shaquille O'Neal's Steel. Classic.
I don't know that I've ever actually heard of that movie before.
What?
I don't think so. I'm Googling it.
What? There's no fucking way you've never seen Steel with Shaq.
I've never seen Steel with Shaq. It's a 1997 American superhero film loosely based on the DC Comics character of the same name. I'm sorry, there's a DC comic character called Steel? DC fucking sucks. Wow.
You know what?
Hey,
sometimes
I feel a little Save Trash cinema action in the future with a Shaquille O'Neal 1997 flick. My choice for this year, we're bringing 2 new movies to the table for best movie from 1997. I'm bringing the 1997 Nathan Lane classic Mouse Hunt. Do you remember this movie? Nathan Lane, Lee Evans, Christopher Walken trying to find this house in this, or this mouse in this house. What a great little flick.
Absolute fucking banger of a movie.
If you've not seen it, stop what you're doing. Run, don't walk to your nearest Hollywood video to get Mouse Hunt on VHS.
The nearest Hollywood video, yeah.
Oh,
Shaq,
man.
Steel. How have you never seen
I've
Steel?
never even heard of it, is the crazy thing.
How? Oh my God.
I think I was so busy thinking about Shaq Fu that I didn't realize Steel was a thing.
It was during the Shaq Fu era. Honestly, it might have come out like right around the same time.
It might have. Let's see what year Shaq Fu was. Shaq Fu 1994. So he was riding high on those Shaq Fu dollars when Steel came out.
Patrick, let me tell you, brother. I don't know if you know what's gonna happen in the world. It's the Golden Beefies, brother.
I need someone to clip that out, and we need to use that as audio for the Golden Beefies every year moving forward. That's our show, folks.
Is it? It is, I think. Yeah.
Oh, no. There's one final quick thing. I completely forgot. Naughty Game of the Year.
Oh, the naughty game of the years. Yeah, why did we forget about the important
So
thing?
we had Cayman had a fun little thing where he texted me his top 10 list and he said, so this is my top 10 list, but this is my naughty top 10 list. And so I think what we should do, because when I compiled it, it actually wasn't as interesting as you'd expect compiled. I think we should both just give our top 5 for our naughty game of the year list. And my thinking, I don't know what your thinking was, but my thinking was, what are the 5 games that I just like devoured the most, had the most fun playing in the moment? Maybe they aren't the best games of the year, but the time I had with them speaks more than the quality of the game. Perhaps was how I thought of it.
Absolutely. Do you want me to start?
You start.
All right. So number 5 for me, Alan Wake 2.
Hell yeah.
Number 4, Dead Island 2. Number 3, Spider-Man 2.
Ooh.
Number 2, Baldur's Gate 3.
Ooh.
And bringing in number 1, RoboCop Rogue City.
For me, the top 5, I put number 5, Dave the Diver. Number 4, Starfield. Number 3, Alan Wake 2. Number 2, Tears of the Kingdom. Number 1, Baldur's Gate 3.
Hell yeah, man. That's wild, dude.
I'm honestly thrilled that I got to finish 2023 having the true Baldur's Gate experience. I've not hit credits yet, but I'm just glad, man. Has my lamp been in the shot all?
I just thought you were going for some like cool aesthetic.
How about that? But yeah, what a game. And with that, folks, our shared game of the year, the true game of the year for Spotlight Games of 2023, shared between Alan Wake 2 and Baldur's Gate 3. If you haven't played them, get off your ass and go play those games. Cayman, I had a blast. I hope you did too.
I did too, man. 2023, some
get
ups,
fucked,
some downs. Great year for video games.
Not necessarily for the people that made them, but for the people that played them.
I do have one thing, Patrick, if you would oblige.
I would oblige.
I do have an announcement about Safe Drive Cinema.
Hell yeah. Announce it, brother.
Yeah. So, Safe Drive Cinema, we're partnering up with our good friend Tony Wash over at Bloody Disgusting and Screambox. Tony Wash is producing the first ever horror movie trivia show that will be released through Bloody Disgusting. And I think episodes will be streamed live through Screambox. The cool thing about this is Tony's going to come on the show. We're bringing him back on. He's going to be bringing a bunch of his co-producers. We're going to be talking about it.
Hell yeah.
And guess what? Live right now, you can apply to be a contestant on the show. The show is called Better Luck Than Chuck. It's a horror movie trivia game show. There's awesome prizes and stuff that are all inside of that. Stay tuned for the interview with Tony. We'll have more details on that. But if you think that you are a horror aficionado like myself, then go ahead, apply to be part of that. It's a really cool experience. And we are obviously giving you guys like the first taste of it. So go take a shot and we'll have that episode out in a couple weeks.
Let's go. I'm excited about that. And then one announcement from us, if you're still listening for Spotlight Games, next week we're recording on Monday, not Tuesday. Why? Because our good friends over at JK Games Podcast and Jordan, aka Cognitive Clips, aka Cognitive Glitch, we're joining forces for a little fantasy critic league. We're bringing it back. We did this 2 years ago, I believe. And we were new podcasters. We just never really revisited it throughout the year. Like sometimes we would kind of mention it, but this year we are making it a concerted effort to check in the entire year throughout. Where, everyone's going to be coming on periodically to recap, how we're doing, the moves we've made, etc., as a way to talk about, kind of extend that last award we gave for best or for the game of the year for next year. We're going to choose our teams as if it's fantasy football of all the games coming out next year. And, we'll go through all the rules next week, but that's what we're doing next week. So Monday, put it on the calendar, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Right here, twitch.tv/SpotlightGamesPod. Make sure you follow us there and on Instagram at SpotlightGamesPod, YouTube as well. Give us a follow so that you can, when we're doing things like
you can be part of the conversation.
Cayman, let's give our listeners back Just a few minutes.
All right.
And call it a show.
All right, middle manager Patrick. All right.
Until next week, it has been nothing but a pleasure.
I love you.
I love you too. Bye-bye.